Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the South America podcast, from the Andes to the Amazon, and almost to Antarctica. Today, we're joined by an insider linguist, a special guest from Santa Barbara, studying Quechuan communities of Bolivia, and more. Special guest, who are you? Could you introduce yourself, your current projects, a little bit about yourself, and we'll dig right in.
Imaynaya hatun napaykuy kachun tukuy qankunapaq manchaykusisqa tarikuni kay p'unchaypi qanku nuqamanta tumpitatawan parlarinaypaq nuqa Vacasmanta kani Bolivia suyumanta. Hi everyone, my name is Noemy Condori Arias. I am a student in the Department of Linguistics here in Santa Barbara. I am from the municipality of Bacas, from the high valley of Cochabamba in Bolivia, and I work with Quechua communities there. I grew up in Bacas, but also later I moved to the city, so I was growing up bilingual. And what else? And I work as an activist, also documenting my language, storytellings, and but I'm also interested in writing a pedagogical grammar for teachers and also Quechua speakers that are interested in teaching the language.
Absolutely. So when you said bilingual, by the way, of course,
Mhm.
listeners or viewers don't know, this would be bilingual in Spanish and indeed
Yeah.
Cochabamba Quechua.
Yeah.
Excellent. And speaking of your activism, we'll get into the book later, but just a little plug immediately. You do have a book out with some other co-authors. I had the pleasure of meeting when I visited your hometown, as it were, of Bacas, your community, which was a lovely experience. But we'll get into that in a second. But first, it would be really lovely if you could take us a little bit through your academic journey. So, now you're doing research, you're doing activism, you're doing all of these interesting things, writing up your projects. But, growing up and also in your sort of schooling, etc., how did you become interested in linguistics specifically? And yeah, also why I always ask every guest why South America. In your case, as a few of the guests as well have been from South America, but why specifically this culture that you grew up with? What really attracted you to, continuing with it and studying it as an academic subject and not just as your lived culture, let's say?
Mhm. So I guess the story really started when I was a child that my mother and neither my father had education opportunities in my hometown. So they decided for us to have a better education. So we moved to the city. And there I realized that for me was just very normal to speak Quechua and Spanish, but attending to a school that was mostly in Spanish, there I got more intimidated to say that I was a Quechua speaker or even just speak the language at school in and with other children that were not Quechua. And also I experienced that the same with my cousins and other family members that they were used to be shamed by being indigenous. And, but at that point, I also heard my mom always telling to other mothers that they should teach and speak Quechua to their children so they can study, and when they grow up, they can be professionals and they can serve the community. That was like a very common idea and important thing that I grew up listening. And later on, when I had to decide what should I study for undergrad here in Bolivia, we call licenciatura. And so I didn't really know like what path to follow because for me it was just anything I can learn. Uh, but I just want to have better opportunities and to serve in my community. And then there was the option to be a teacher, and but I didn't want to go to the teachers' schools that is normales in Bolivia. So in the university, it was the program of applied linguistics,
Uh-huh.
and there we learn English, French, and some grammar, Spanish grammar. And then later on, there was a class in Quechua, which I was very excited about.
Oh,
And
did they not have it
because
when you started, or was it only
mm,
available to more advanced
uh,
students?
it was available after 2 years of
Ah,
study. So it's not like since the beginning as
okay.
English or French. Yeah.
Do you know why they did that? What was the logic, let's say, behind that? Did they,
Uh,
why didn't they
well,
offer it to beginners, beginning students?
Mhm. I think the program was meant to be for foreign languages,
Hmm.
so French, English were more common, and then since some low oh, they also introduced Quechua, but they didn't put it together. So
Ah,
it
interesting.
was like the program was like
Were there
that.
people in your class who were not indigenous, but who
Oh,
wanted to learn Quechua?
um, yeah, some students were curious to learn, but not many.
I see.
No, yeah, most of them were there to learn either English or French.
Of course.
And then of course there were many Quechua speakers that were already also wanted to learn English. Mhm.
Yeah, that makes
So
sense.
mhm.
And did they offer any other, let's say, national indigenous languages in Bolivia,
Mm,
such as Aymara, or indeed anything, any other language maybe from Amazonia, or was it just Quechua? Because this was at the university in Cochabamba, correct?
yeah, it was just Quechua.
Mm,
There was no any other class. Yeah. Although, like, there are Aymara speakers because of migration, but
mhm.
also in Cochabamba, there are Aymara communities in
Right.
some parts of Cochabamba. But still, it is just Quechua that is introduced in schools and also university.
I see. We should maybe just say for listeners that, of course, Bolivia is an incredibly linguistically diverse and rich country in this sense. Two major kind of language groups, let's say, and it's kind of controversial in linguistics if they're really languages or more actually like language families. And I think many say language
Mhm.
families are Aymara and Quechua, kind of as families with many, many varieties all throughout the Andes and even a little bit into the kind of Andean Amazon borderlands. But and in many countries in South America, especially Quechuan is very extensive, goes from Colombia to Chile and Argentina even. So it's quite a lot of space covered by this family. We've had you know let's say interviews about this language family on the podcast before. But then specifically in Bolivia, it's not as if there's even just one zone that only Quechua or only Aymara, like you said. It's actually quite
Mhm.
mixed in very interesting ways. But it would be fair to say, would you agree that Cochabamba is primarily Spanish and Quechua, right?
Mm,
Like majority.
yeah, yeah. There are other indigenous languages in Chapare, more in like the tropical area,
Hmm.
but yeah, I think the majority is Quechua.
Right.
Mm.
Yeah. Tropical Andean interface is super
Mhm.
interesting and definitely merits its own discussion as well.
Mhm.
Great. So this brings us kind of up to university. You said your mother was a profound influence. It seems like she was a great role model in not preventing any kind of Spanish education, but at the same time, very much distilling, or sorry, instilling rather, and kind of taking great initiative to promote and almost defend, in a way, Quechua from, yeah, any kind of discrimination that may have been faced.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was quite interesting for me. Like, even though she was facing a lot of discrimination, she always stick to the language more and more, like until nowadays.
Mm,
And I think, like, at that point of my life, I didn't know if she was a language activist. But for me, like, that is the reason why I do activism now, and I also work with the language. And also that I consider her as a co-researcher in my main project. And so in the university, when I started learning, well, not learning really, but like kind of relearning to write and also to learn other varieties of Quechua, because in the
mm.
classroom it was not the same as my variety. So there were differences. And,
Certainly. We should maybe
and
say that too, is that there are great efforts, aren't there, to standardize all of these
mm,
different, very interesting Quechuan varieties all throughout South America, and what's taught in the classroom is sometimes incredibly different from what is spoken, let's say, in the mountains or in the forests, etc. Even in the cities, but just not in the schools.
mm-hmm. Yeah, something, so it was like very controversial for me, some of the things that I was learning, because it was like, this is how it's SketchUp. And then, but the way I speak, the way I always hear it at home, in my community, was very different. For example, they will say the verb should always go to like the end, like this is like very settled form. But if you observe like natural speech, it's not like that. It
Right.
will be so it's and the order will be flexible, and also it depends on like the information you are giving.
Certainly, that
Um,
makes sense. But I've come across that too, where when I actually hear people, when I do my work in various parts of South America with various Quechuan varieties, I have heard actually very little of the verb at the end. And sometimes I would try to put the verb at the end, and they would say, why are you saying it like that? What, or, huh, that sounds funny, or, oh, no, yeah, I understand. I wouldn't do that though, these things. And I go, okay. And so I was learning that this was not the case. So it makes sense to me what you say. So then when did the move happen? Because now you're based in the United States, in California, as we mentioned. So what prompted that move? Was it something for a particular opportunity, or a different experience? And what do you think that has brought you, studying your own language, but from a completely different location now?
Mhm. So at the university, there were some grad students that will come and give talks, and also some like short workshops where like how to record, like what is documentation even. And I was very interested in that, and I learned about that. But also during the pandemic, and before that, I was already started teaching Quechua. And for me, it was hard to explain some of the things in from Quechua grammar, and I was like, yeah, I know how to teach, but I don't know like the whole grammar of Quechua, so I can have like a better methodology to teach. And so I wanted to learn more about linguistics. And at that time, I think I was also interested in compounds, like, for example, Misi Munaku, which means like cat lover, something like that. So we have this kind of compounds that can be noun plus verb
So
or
Misi
noun.
Misi is cat,
Yeah.
and then
And
Munako, no? Right?
yeah, Munaku is verb.
Right, and it comes from
Yeah.
the verb to like or to love, right?
Yeah.
So you stick it together and you make it a compound, like cat lover.
Yeah. Yeah, so this kind of compounds are like very productive, and it was quite funny the meaning of this and very common. So I wrote a paper about that, and then I remember I cited Marianne Mitten, who now it's my advisor here in Santa Barbara. So I emailed her telling about my background and that I was interested in learning about linguistics. So I decided to apply to this school so I can learn more about linguistics and use this opportunity to collaborate, do community work, but also to help other speakers that doesn't have the training to teach the language, to have better methodologies, to have better programs of learning and teaching as well.
Excellent, excellent. Um, so then, and this is ongoing, right? This is
Mhm.
ongoing, both coursework and research, etc. Teaching you, I think you've probably spread quite a lot of knowledge about Bolivian Quechua to the Santa Barbara area.
Mhm.
I can imagine. So then, when did this book come into being? Again, I'll give it the visual. So what's the book
Mhm.
called? What is it?
Mhm.
And you mentioned your mother as a co-researcher. She's also a co-author on this book, for instance. So yeah.
Yeah, the book's title is Ahuarispa Sirinapag, which means to laugh while we are like chatting.
Hmm.
Um, we work on this book in my second year, which was at the beginning of 2024, I think. And so I have an ongoing project that is documenting Quechua literature in some communities of Vacas. And together with a friend and my mother, we collected some stories of the community, animal stories, and also just other legends and we decided that we wanted to have the book printed for children because we were also having some workshops with children. And then we choose 10 stories. And some are about the fox uh, and the frog. And there some stories are also just from personal stories. And and so we wanted to have this book for children and for the community, but also that this can be useful for teachers for more advanced courses. Because right now we have a lot of material for basic courses, but not necessarily for advanced levels. So we wanted to have something that resembles the natural speech, the way people speak without too much editing. We edited a little bit, but we try to maintain the natural speech. How is the interactions between people, people and animals, people and mountain, in nature? So we wanted to have that. And yeah, we are planning to work more about it. And the reason why my mother is also a co-author because in some cases when we have the recording sessions, I will be just the person that is setting the microphone and everything, but she will be the one that is engaging in conversation. So that's why she is a co-author. And mm, and all of us have different roles like transcribing, translating, um, but also in the recording session. The work was very exhausting. It was like maybe in a month that we tried to publish it. Um, And yeah, and it's available online as well in the website for everyone else that is interested in reading the Spanish, the Quechua, or the English version. Um,
I'll put a link to that website in the
mhm,
description for this video so that
mhm,
any listeners or viewers can check it out. And I would encourage them to. It's a wonderful resource. Beautiful images, beautifully illustrated text, and as you say, audio. All
mhm,
three together. It's a wonderful piece of work.
mhm, mhm. And yeah, as you mentioned, it has also the audio version because even though the printed version is just Quechua, like as Quechua speakers, not everyone are like very used to read it.
Hmm.
So we also want to encourage to this, but also have to the audio version for anyone that want to listen and also to improve pronunciation. But also just to listen while you are cooking or anything, because that was the natural way that we used to share these stories, like in common community activities like lunchtime, exchanging products, or at bedtime. So the audio also is for that.
Wonderful. And just to wrap up, what are your next projects? Do you have any other books in mind? And if you have any brief advice to anyone wanting to do something similar to what you've done.
Mhm. So some of the following projects that I have in mind is writing about the some stories of women, because I think the role of women in Quechua communities are very important um, to uh, for keeping the language and transmitting the language. Because even in my family, that was a very strong role that my mother had. Like, even though she was able to speak Spanish, I always maintained Quechua because of her. And sometimes I will speak Spanish with my dad, but never with my mother. So I think that's why I decided to write about this. And we already have some stories, but we have time to transcribe. And just some takeaways about language documentation or Quechua documentation in Quechua communities would be to learn more about the community and understand the culture in their own way, and also see what is the goals of the community, because this researcher goal needs to align with this. And if there is anything that is not on the interest of the community, then this should change. And also just be aware that even though we can belong to a Quechua community, if we are working with another Quechua community, the experience is not going to be the same. Like sometimes we think, oh, Quechua, it's the same, but no, it's very different from place to place, the language itself. Like if we look at the morphology, sometimes it looks, oh yeah, it's the same morphemes, but no, the functions are different and the meaning semantically will change. So I think that is very beautiful and very interesting to see like how this Quechua languages developed and how different they become, and also, but the similarities that they all are maintaining as well.
Absolutely. Well, I think on that note of diversity and a word of advice to honor that diversity and honor community wishes, anyone who is interested, we'll have a link to your LinkedIn, to your university profile, to your book, etc., and people can find your work. And we'll have to sit down and chat again sometime as well. But for now, thank you very much for coming on.
Tukuy Isabela pachi tukuyta uyarikunapaq. See you later.
Bye.